words like the election was rigged and the election was stolen and all this nonsense about these voting machines from Venezuela and Hugo Chavez and the bamboo and all of this nonsense, all this QAnon bullshit, that is terrible for our democracy unless you can prove it and you can show that this stuff is real. And you can't prove any of it because it didn't happen. But if that did happen, storming the Capitol is the moderate option. Did you hear about the next big crisis? The crisis in the Republican Party is what I'm talking about. So as we know, the Republican Party has been fighting a kind of mini civil war for a period of time. We saw high-level Republicans like Liz Cheney get purged from the second most powerful position in the House Republican Party because she wouldn't accept the big lie. Which big lie? The big lie that the election was rigged against her. And she was replaced, not rigged against her, but rigged against Trump. And she was replaced by somebody who even had a worse voting record when it comes to being in line with Donald Trump's values. As in, Liz Cheney voted more in favor with Donald Trump than the person that replaced her. But that didn't matter. What mattered was loyalty. Loyalty to Donald Trump. And that's what got her purged from that position. She's not the only one that has been receiving blows. Mitt Romney is another person within the Republican Party that's been getting a lot of blowback for him not accepting the big lie. Susan Collins, this is true for her as well, but I think she's been given a little bit more leeway due to the fact that she's in a Democrat state, and they realize that if she acts a little too crazy, even though I think that her voting record is awful, then she's going to lose in Maine. I mean, Maine's a blue state. Putting all of that aside, there's been a lot of, maybe smoothing over in the Republican Party. This is, of course, has the one valuable exception of Madison Cawthorn. I haven't talked at length about this, but Madison Cawthorn seems to be getting a lot of heat right now with pictures of him in lingerie leaking onto the internet. Geek, you're going to have to add that picture in right here because, my God, that was an interesting dilemma because personally, I don't care if Madison Cawthorn was in lingerie. In fact, I think he looked swell in the lingerie, but you know how certain people are about manliness and masculinity. And now he's in a financial trading scandal. Oof. And it's coming out right before the Republican primary in his district where he is going to be challenged. That's also on top of the scandal he had by saying that many of his contemporaries and colleagues were doing hookers and blow. That I'm putting it bluntly. I'm not using the politically correct terms, hookers and blow. And when asked to state publicly which members, he wouldn't say, and he eventually apologized after getting chewed out privately by Kevin McCarthy. Speaking of Kevin McCarthy, there was a segment on Tucker Carlson's show recently talking about the man. If you don't know who Kevin McCarthy is the House Minority Leader. He is the leader of the House Republicans. He has, many would say, a vice grip on the party, and he's trying to ride that fine line between the good old boys of the Republican Party and the new whack job crazed fucking psychopaths who have joined a cult saying Donald Trump won the 2020 election and nothing they can do will change their mind. One example of this, even though this person is quite old, would be David Perdue. David Perdue recently talked about how, Donald Trump actually won the 2020 election. And that's how he opened his first statement in the Republican debates for Georgia, for, I believe, governor. So, to put it gently, this good old boys versus the new Trump loyalist wing combat is still going on, but it kind of smoothed over for a bit. As in, not smoothed over like, oh, they've all reserved the differences, but we haven't heard a lot. Then some audio leaked. And let's look at this clip quick of Tucker Carlson reacting to this audio leaking, because it's quite interesting. Definitely when you consider that Tucker Carlson is extremely popular within the Republican Party base as a place people go to for news, and I believe is the #1 cable news show in the country. And this is what he had to say, Tucker Carlson, a Republican, had to say about the House Minority Leader, the leader of the Republicans in the House. Let's play it.
Kevin McCarthy of California told his close friend Liz Cheney that he hoped the social media companies would censor more conservative Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump, the sitting president, had already been silenced by those companies, but McCarthy wanted the tech oligarchs to do more, to force disobedient lawmakers off the internet. Quote, can't they take their Twitter accounts away too? Those are the tape-recorded words of Congressman Kevin McCarthy, a man who in private turns out sounds like an MSNBC contributor.
An MSNBC contributor. That's Rachel Maddow's network. Also, make note of the Titantron at the bottom of the screen here. Kevin McCarthy hates people like you and the show. Jesus Christ. And that's on top of the one that was right before it. Kevin McCarthy is a puppet of the Dem Party. Scathing words from a person who has a lot of sway with Republican voters and is the #1 cable news network show in America. Let's let him finish his statement.
Sounds like an MSNBC contributor. And yet, unless conservatives get their act together right away, Kevin McCarthy or one of his highly liberal allies like Elise Stefanik,
one of his highly liberal, they're making it like Kevin McCarthy is as you would say, a libtard. He's not. He's a diehard Republican. There's a reason why he has the position he has, is because he's been fighting for Republican points forever. Deregulation, lowering taxes, the small government, favoring the church over the separation of church and state, the CRT stuff, the we got to stop the grooming, like all that, all these things that, the Republican Party is supposed to be based around. Not to mention, the guy has kowtowed publicly multiple times for Donald Trump. And so it's so strange to see him be slammed like this on the #1 right-wing talk show and the #1 talk show, political talk show that is, in America.
Is very likely to be Speaker of the House in January. That would mean we will have a Republican Congress led by a puppet of the Democratic Party.
A puppet of the Democratic Party.
So you wouldn't know any of this.
A puppet of the Democratic Party. What could possibly inspire such a vitriolic reaction from Tucker Carlson? What did Kevin McCarthy say in this audio? Did he say something wild? Did he come out in favor of abortion? Did he come out in favor of, communism? Did he come out and say that I'm secretly dating Nancy Pelosi or Bernie Sanders? No, he didn't say that. Let's exactly look at what Kevin McCarthy said by looking at the original New York Times article that started this scandal. McCarthy feared GOP lawmakers put people in jeopardy after January 6th. New audio recordings reveal Kevin McCarthy worried that comments by his far-right colleagues could incite violence. He said he would try to rein in lawmakers, but has instead defended them. Let's read a little bit of this before I give my thoughts, and let's listen to the audio. Representative Kevin McCarthy, the House Republican leader, feared in the aftermath of the January 6th attack that several far-right members of Congress would incite violence against other lawmakers, identifying several names as security risks in private conversation with party leaders. Mr. McCarthy talked to other congressional Republicans about wanting to rein in multiple hardliners who were deeply involved in Donald J. Trump's efforts to contest the 2020 election and undermine the peaceful transfer of power. According to the not SJW walking the line word for this would be a coup, according to an audio recording obtained by the New York Times. But Mr. McCarthy did not follow through on the sterner steps that some Republicans encouraged him to take, opting instead to seek political accommodation with the most extreme members of the GOP in the interest of advancing his own career. Mr. McCarthy's remarks represent one of the starkest acknowledgments from a Republican leader that the party's rank-and-file lawmakers played a role in stoking violence on January 6, 2021, and posed a threat in the days after the Capitol attack. Audio recordings of the comments were obtained in reporting for the forthcoming book, This Will Not Pass: Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future, and the phone call with other Republican leaders on January 10th, 4 days after people stormed the Capitol and militia members were waiting outside of D.C. with firearms to charge in, by the way. Those militia members have been arrested. militia members, by the way, that Alex Jones talked openly about, that these people will be outside the Capitol during this event. This was like public knowledge. This is not debatable. These people are under arrest. These people have been arrested for this. This is, again, there were plans to overthrow the government. We haven't even finished all of the investigations into why did Donald Trump and his office order many of the organizers to buy burner phones with cash before the event. What was all of Donald Trump's audio recordings during this time? Because apparently he made a lot of phone calls. We haven't even finished the investigation. And that's not even getting into Rudy Giuliani's many actions of trying to get fake electors and the encouragement from others like Marjorie Taylor Greene to install martial law. Or the encouragement from many in Trump's cabinet to actually use the military to seize voting machines. Again, a military coup. But let's continue. In the phone call with other Republican leaders on January 10, Mr. McCarthy referred chiefly to two representatives, Matt Gaetz of Florida and Mo Brooks of Alabama, two psychopaths. One who is currently on trial for sex trafficking of a minor, by the way. And there are Venmo payments to prove it, as endangering the security of other lawmakers in the Capitol complex. But he and his allies discussed several other representatives who made comments they saw as offensive or dangerous, including Lauren Boebert of Colorado and Barry Moore of Alabama. The country was too crazy, Mr. McCarthy said, for members to be talking and tweeting recklessly at such a volatile moment. Let's listen to it.
The other thing that we have to do is these members on either whatever position you are, calling out other members, that stuff's got to stop, especially in this nature. So when I get up right here, I'm going to call Gates, but anything else we see, don't assume I see everything, don't assume I know everything, but we got to have one central point. So, I mean, if you can bring this stuff to Dan Lear Legansky, so you can have it, but, I mean, don't sit back around. It's going to be for you guys personally. Tension is too high. The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. And I don't want to play politics with any of that.
So, can I be honest? Everything he's saying here is not objectionable. Everything he said, and there's more audio, and we're going to play more audio. Everything he said here is completely non-objectionable. The idea that certain members of Congress, like Matt Gaetz, had made wild, incorrect statements about the election being stolen, that could lead to violence. Because let me tell you something. If you as an American believe that the election was stolen, legitimately stolen, like that, you know, we had a democracy and we have a democracy no more. There was, you know, we had one and then the dirty commies came in and took it away, and that a new president was about to be sworn in who was going to take away all your freedoms and was installed illegally against the will of the people. Storming the Capitol is the moderate option. And I mean that. If you genuinely believe that our nation is about to enter a dictatorship and our democracy was being stolen, the Second Amendment, in part, was put in place for moments like this. And that's why words like the election was rigged and the election was stolen and all this nonsense about these voting machines from Venezuela and Hugo Chavez and the bamboo and all of this nonsense, all this QAnon bullshit, that is terrible for our democracy unless you can prove it and you can show that this stuff is real. And you can't prove any of it because it didn't happen. But if that did happen, storming the Capitol is the immoderate option. The more extremist option would be actual just full-on rebellion, full-on militias just overthrowing the government, which, by the way, almost happened. Remember, there were militia members outside the Capitol ready to storm in with guns. There was a planned coup, and they were this close to actually carrying it out with force, with firearms, taking governmental buildings to stop Joe Biden from being elected and to keep Donald Trump in office. Because if you believe your democracy being stolen, of course you want to protect it. So it's not that big of a surprise that if you have a bunch of people, thousands of people in the Capitol, being like having the fanning the flames of this patriotic fervor that the election's being stolen, it's not a surprise that they stormed the Capitol. And so someone like Matt Gaetz, someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and many of these other newer Republican colleagues, we'll call them, who were fanning these flames, yeah, they do bear responsibility. Because they're the ones who put this nonsense in their mind. They're the ones that go on Steve Bannon's podcast to talk about the election being stolen. And Steve Bannon also bears responsibility. And he is somebody who will not testify because he knows that if he gets caught in one of his lies, and he probably would have to lie to stay out of trouble, then he can go to prison. Let's listen to more audio, because most of this is completely non-objectionable. Where's the scandal? Not to mention, when you're talking about somebody like Matt Gaetz, somebody who's, again, on trial for sex trafficking, this feels like something that, again, should not spark much outrage, especially if he's not talking about removing these people from office anyway. He's just talking about reeling them in. I mean, this is just basic politics. Reeling in freshman congressmen who go too far and are too extreme. This is how American politics have worked forever. This is not like a crazy Democratic Party puppet move. This isn't somebody hating people like you, like Tucker Carlson's Titantron said. Let's listen more. Let's listen to some more stuff. He's putting people in jeopardy, McCarthy said of Gaetz, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people come prepared with rope, with everything else. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the number 2 House Republican, suggested that Gaetz might be crossing a legal boundary. It's potentially illegal what he's doing. Let's listen.
Okay, the other thing I want to bring up, and I'm making some phone calls to some members. I just got something sent now about Newsmax, something Matt Gaetz said, where he's calling people's names out, saying an anti-Trump in this type of atmosphere. And some of the other places, this is serious stuff people are doing that has to stop. I'll make individual phone calls.
Mo and Louis' comments too. A lot of members have said some real concerning things about.
Did they say something? Did they say something today too?
No, I said Louis was at. Mo was at the rally. You know, we're kicking ass and taking names thing at the Trump rally.
So these are things before they kick that ass.
Okay, what did Gaetz say?
Gaetz brought up Liz.
Can I just say that one of the many reasons why I will not trust the Republicans with our country is because they can't even handle balancing audio levels. And if they can't handle that, then how could they ever handle running the country?
Specifically, I just saw that on Twitter.
Adam, someone just sent it. Gonzalez just sent it to me, so I'm calling Gaetz. I'm explaining to him. I don't know how much to say, but I'm going to have some other people call him too. But the nature of what, if I'm getting briefing, I'm going to get another one from the FBI tomorrow. This is serious shit to cut this out.
Yeah, that's I mean, it's potentially illegal what he's doing.
Well, he's putting people in jeopardy, and he doesn't need to be doing this. We saw what people would do in the Capitol, and these people came prepared with rope, with everything else.
Every single thing McCarthy said here is completely non-objectionable and completely correct. And it's not surprising that 4 days after the Capitol was stormed, and we didn't even know the full extent of the scandal when it comes to the militia members or Rudy Giuliani planning with the fake electors or the proposal to have the military seize voting machines and to extend Donald Trump's time in office months after January 20th. When Biden was supposed to be and was inaugurated. And as more information come out, we saw Kevin McCarthy actually lessen on this position. He got softer on this position, even though this was the reasonable position. This is the position of somebody who principally cares about our democracy more than they care about their own personal power. This is the principled position of somebody who understands the drastic nature of the moment and could, maybe shift our democracy to the right course to stop something like this from happening again. And let me be clear, Kevin McCarthy did not take that path. Neither did Matt Gaetz. Neither did Lauren Boebert. Neither did Major Taylor Greene. Because these are people that seem to be more interested in their own personal power than our democracy. I will say that I would say Kevin McCarthy is not to the same level as Matt Gaetz, not to the same level as Lauren Boebert, but that's what seems to be happening. And even though he made completely unobjectionable comments that are even less unobjectionable as more information came out showing the full extent of the scandal, and Matt Gaetz, who's currently, and again, a sex trafficking scandal of a minor, somebody under the age of 18, Venmo payments to prove it, who's hiring big ticket lawyers from out of the county where it will be heard, meaning he's not going to settle, meaning he's going to bring this stuff to trial. He decided to respond, even though, again, if you're in that type of a scandal, maybe you should keep your mouth shut, because that would make sense. He decided to respond to this, even though, again, it seems that Kevin McCarthy has been nothing but extremely soft on Gaetz. Let's listen. On Tuesday night, Mr. Gaetz responded with a blistering statement, cascading the two House Republican leaders as weak men. While I was protecting President Trump from impeachment, oh my God, they were protecting Liz Cheney from criticism, he said. Mr. McCarthy, referring to Mo Brooks, said that the Trump loyalists had behaved even worse on January 6th than Mr. Trump, who told the crowd assembled on the National Mall to fight like hell before his supporters stormed the Capitol and attempted to disrupt the electoral vote count. Mr. Brooks told the rally that it was the day American patriots start taking down name and kicking ass. You think the president deserves to be impeached for these comments? Mr. McCarthy asked rhetorically. That's almost something that goes further than what the president said. Speaking about rank-and-file lawmakers to his fellow leaders, McCarthy was sharply critical and suggested he was going to tell them to stop their inflammatory conduct. Our members have to start paying attention to what they say too, and you can't put up with that, he said, adding an expletive. Let's hear the expletive.
What did Mo Brooks say down at that rally, though?
It's the kicking ass and taking names thing is the one that I've seen the most from people. I didn't watch his speech, but that's a number of members sent that to me, so that he used that term.
And Louis said, we need to fight or something, right? Didn't he say something a couple days out that was horrendous?
It was something like that, yes. It was incendiary.
Can I just quickly say, I actually think this is the weakest criticism, because it's very easy to say politicians use terms like we have to fight, all the time. I think that there is a criticism to say that if you have a crowd of people who believe the election was stolen, who believe their democracy is being murdered, who believe conspiracies about pedophiles and QAnon bullshit, okay? Even though Matt Gaetz was there, if they believe all of that, then it's not going to be that surprising if you start using language like we got to fight and take names, that they might not interpret that in a metaphorical sense, but maybe more in a literal sense, or you can fan the flames of emotion to such an extent that you get the results of what you had on January 6th. Definitely when there's organizations like the Proud Boys on the ground who are specifically there organizing to push this to a point of violence, because the Proud Boys are a far-right fight club, and there's militia members outside of the Capitol with machine guns.
I mean, you got the Maxine Waters and all that stuff too, so, I know the Dems are in a very strong position right now to drive a lot of things, but our members have got to start paying attention to what they say too, and you can't put up with that type of shit.
Brooks apparently said, today is the day American patriots start taking down names and kicking ass, which I would say is even a step further than the kind of rhetorical take,
Well, if you think the president deserves to be impeached for his comments, that almost sounds like he goes further than what the president said. All right, let's see.
It feels like people who, I guess they had to face the reality of the moment because they're in the moment, which now they can distance themselves from it enough that Americans have, it's old news enough. It's only been a year, by the way. It hasn't been that long. And I guess for me, maybe I care more than the average person because I was there. I live in the DC area right now. I'm in Poland to cover the war, soon to be in Ukraine. But maybe to me, it matters more because I live in the DMV. I live 20 minutes outside of DC. I was there on January 6th in a Biden hoodie, right? I was there. I was threatened. I recorded instances of violence. I saw violence carried out. People came up to me and threatened me. I saw people storm the Capitol. I talked to people that day. They fully intended to make that day a starting point of something bigger.
Someone give me the info of what they said. Have either of them apologized for what they've done?
I have not seen that anywhere.
Gomer, so Wasserman Schultz introduced the Gomer censure, and he did tweet out that, I'm not advocating violence. He also cited Martin Luther King, so, it wasn't, exactly what I'd call an artful walk back, but...
I love that. He said, I'm not saying be violent, also Martin Luther King. Brilliant. Just put Martin Luther King at the end of any statement, and immediately you're political gold.
Sure, I think there's obviously a lot of comments people could circle and find reason to introduce things about.
How many members spoke at that rally?
I thought it was between 8 and 10, but I don't have a confirmation on that.
Yeah, we can put together a list of the members that did.
Really, 8 and 10?
Yeah, Kev, I've also heard some...
Did Marjorie Green speak there? I'm sorry, Steve, what did you say?
I've heard some members talk about bringing Mo up at steering committee to possibly strip him of committees, kind of in the vein of Steve King. So I'd imagine this will definitely come up at steering committee.
What committees is he on?
Not good ones, but...
Armed services.
Oh, God. They don't even know.
And there's an issue with Alabama. Barry Moore has said some things today even that we should look at, honestly.
What did Barry say today?
Pulling it up 1 second so I quote him correctly.
Okay.
All right, so he deleted his personal Twitter account, but Jamie Dupree with the Atlanta Journal got screenshot. He said about 22 hours ago, wow, we have more arrests for stealing a podium on January 6th than we do for stealing an election on November the 3rd. Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Detroit would be places I recommend you start.
Dude, that's the thing that's crazy about January 6th. People died, right? Multiple people died. And still, just a few days later, wow, we've arrested more people because some stuff was stolen. Again, they stormed the Capitol building. Let me tell you, if Antifa did it, they would have a much different reaction. By the way, can I remind everyone, Matt Gaetz, one of the topics of this article, one of the people mentioned here, actually before the bodies were cold, said that this was actually done by Antifa with basically zero evidence. And the little evidence he did provide was debunked within 24 hours. He tried to use a facial recognition software that's saying that, hey, these faces that were recognized from this facial recognition software led to Antifa websites. You go to said Antifa websites. Antifa is all about anonymity. The whole black bloc thing doesn't work if everybody knows who you are, right? That's why there's not an official Antifa list. That's why making Antifa a terror organization doesn't make sense, because it's not an organization, right? But you go to the website, they have faces of white nationalists on the website, white nationalists to look out for. Like, for example, the notorious founder of the White Students Union. So if anything, all that proved what Matt Gaetz was talking about was actually just that white nationalists were in a Trump rally. So congratulations.
There's video evidence of these crimes as well. Hashtag election integrity matters. And then Moore also made this tweet on Saturday night as the U.S. Capitol police officer who shot and killed a woman as he tried to get into the lobby. So he tweeted at Marjorie Green and at NARAL, I understand it was a black police officer that shot the white female veteran. You know, that doesn't fit the narrative.
Wow.
Oh, man.
You can see they realize these fucking morons, the seeds they've sown have led to these fucking morons being normalized in the party. And since this phone call, basically no one had consequences, right? The only people that were thrown under the bus were the people that were actually arrested, which many of them then referred to as political prisoners. Oh my God. You can feel it. You can hear it. Oh my God. In their tone, they know they fucked up. And now they got to clean up the mess of all their fellow party members.
This is what we have to confront with this.
Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too?
Can't they take their Twitter accounts away too? Which, gotta be honest, I understand the sympathy, right? I understand the sympathy. Take away this person's Twitter account, maybe he'll stop just spouting off nonsense at the middle of the night on the toilet like Trump does. Mr. McCarthy and Mr. Scalise did not respond to a request for comment. Mr. Brooks on Tuesday dismissed the Republican leader's criticism and noted that a lawsuit brought against him by the Democratic member of Congress for his January 6th speech had been dismissed. Kevin McCarthy spoke before knowing the facts. During the January 10th phone call, McCarthy was speaking with a small group of Republican leaders, including Mr. Scalise, Ms. Cheney, Representative Tom Emmer of Minnesota, as well as a number of aides. Can I say the only person here that actually stayed somewhat principled, even though the Cheney family, the father and the daughter, I'm not a huge fan of. One of the daughters, that is. Miss Cheney was the only one who actually stood with it till the end, until she lost her position. She paid a price for telling the truth about the election not being stolen. The price of honesty, I would say. Even though, can I just say, all of the policies that resulted from people saying the election was stolen, all the election integrity laws, or I would call them voter restriction laws, is what we should really call them. She still voted for them, but still that wasn't enough, because she wouldn't lie about the election being stolen, because she knows that lying about an election being stolen reduces the faith in the foundation of our democracy, reduces the faith in our systems, and can lead to violent moments like this. And I think that she was one of the few Republicans that actually had that realization and then stuck with it. The rest of them had that realization, but abandoned it once it became politically costly to take a principled stance. Now, there's more audio that we can play. There's so much more audio. Should we? I think there's one more piece of audio and then a bunch of reactions. Let's play this one next piece of audio. It was on this GOP leadership call that McCarthy told his colleagues that he would call Trump and tell him, "It would be my recommendation, you should resign." The House Majority Leader, it would make sense. The House Minority Leader has in recent days lied about and tried to downplay his comments. Last week, after the Times reported the remarks, McCarthy called the report totally false and wrong. And after McCarthy's denial, a source who had confidently shared a recording of the call with Book's authors agreed to let the Times publish parts of the audio. In the days since that recording has been made public, the Republican leader has repeated his denial and emphasized that he never actually carried out his plan to urge Mr. Trump to quit. So he just talked a big game and didn't deliver. Mr. McCarthy's comments, casting other Republican lawmakers as a menace within Congress, illustrate the difference between how he spoke about his own party right after January 6th and what he imagined to be strict confidence, and the way he has interacted with those lawmakers in the 15 months since then. On the January 10th call, Mr. McCarthy said he planned to speak with Mr. Gates and ask him to not attack other lawmakers by name. The following day, in a larger meeting for the House of Representatives, Mr. McCarthy pleaded with lawmakers not to incite, but rather to respect one another. But in his determination to become Speaker of the House after the 2022 elections, Mr. McCarthy has spent much of the last year forging a closer political partnership with the far right, showing little public concern that his most extreme colleagues could instigate bloodshed with their overheated or hateful rhetoric. In recent months, Mr. McCarthy has opposed punishing Republican members of Congress who have been accused of inciting violence, including Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, and most recently, Representative Paul Gosar of Arizona, who posted an animated video on social media that depicted him killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, the left-wing Democrat. It was, he specifically, man, if we could include this footage, that'd be great too, Geek. Thank you in advance. It was like Attack on Titan. It was one of those videos, like he went and like slit her throat. You have to see it to understand it, but I don't want to show it at the moment. The other one, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, that could refer to a lot of moments. It could refer to her Facebook posts and comments that were like, inciting violence. It could refer to a few other moments. So It's actually sad that I don't know which moment they're referring to when they say Marjorie Taylor Greene inciting violence. But let's keep going. Actually, you know what? I think we've gotten what we need out of this. I'm gonna be completely honest. The rest of this is just reactions from many more of the people named here. I just want to bring up a point here about Kevin McCarthy and the Republican, as you say, civil war, as we'll call it. Kevin McCarthy had an opportunity to take a principled stance, and it seemed in private, now we know more than ever, he was considering it and he was talking it up. He fully understands what happened on January 6th, the violence that occurred. I mean, he was even talking about encouraging Trump to resign. He understood that it was a pivotal moment for our democracy, pivotal moment for public safety, and a pivotal moment for our history. It was a historical moment, and I saw with my own eyes the violence that occurred that day. He had a moment where he could have course corrected, and he seemed to have completely understood that this was a pivotal moment for the party, and he failed. He failed to course correct. He did not reel in people like Matt Gaetz, sex trafficker Gaetz. He did not reel in Marjorie Taylor Greene. He did not reel in Lauren Boebert. He did not reel in Paul Gosar. He did not reel in these people who have spent their career on the far right pushing narratives about the 2020 election, that it was stolen, that led to the violence that occurred on that day. And he didn't reel in Donald Trump either. He still talks up Trump. But the problem is, when Liz Cheney showed a little bit of weakness when it came to staying with the Republican narrative on elections being stolen, she was purged from her leadership positions because she wouldn't lie. Kevin McCarthy decided to at least accept the lie. Maybe not personally promote it with the drumbeat, but to at least accept it. And now, what we see is a show of weakness when it comes to loyalty that was shared, what he thought was, in confidence privately, in a phone call that he did not think was recorded. Now, whether this show of weakness to the Republican narrative, to the right-wing narrative, to the big lie, will lead to the same thing that it led to Liz Cheney, and it will lead to him being removed as minority leader or him losing his power in the Republican Party, I would say that is probably unlikely. I think there's enough loyalists and people who benefit from their relationship with him. And when I say loyalists, I mean like more the old dogs. I gotta use loyalists. There's a lot of loyalists on many different sides here. I think there's enough for him to keep skirting on through to possibly being a majority leader if the Republicans win big in 2022. But that's only because he didn't stay principled. The only reason he'll probably keep his position as minority leader for the Republicans is because he was willing to abandon his principles. And the reason he is now going to face repercussions to some extent within his own party is because for a moment, for a split second in a phone call 4 days after we saw the consequences of the big lie, he showed signs of being principled. Signs of being principled. And that was enough. That was enough. Absolutely pathetic. That was a great segment. I am starting the Church of Grass.
Yo.
The Church of Grass. So the principles of our organization, okay, is you can have fun. You can be political. You can engage in drama. But at the end of the day, you must stay connected to the real world and not being a fucking freak. Okay? We're not going to have people debating if neopronouns, you can have the N-word as your pronoun. Okay? As Mr. Irrelevant, I'll call that out directly. Okay? We're not going to have that. That shit's silly. It's stupid. And it hurts our space.